My name is Natasha. We were only two siblings. I was the younger and the beloved one, and my brother David was always the person who would give up everything for me. Our father was a government employee, punctual and strict with principles, but always gentle with me. Mother's love was beyond words. Honestly, the whole house's attention was always on me. Every tantrum of mine was tolerated, every demand fulfilled. Mother even did the kitchen work herself, often saying, "Will my daughter burn her hands? I'm still alive." Father would laugh and say, "When Natasha gets married, then what will happen?" I would shyly say, "Then I will learn to work too." Right now, I am studying. David completed his education and started a good job. Every success of his was a moment of joy for me. I used to bake cakes for him happily and write cards. When he came home tired from work, just sitting with me for a few minutes made all his troubles vanish. Mark, our teacher, used to say that seeing the love between us made his heart happy, and silently, I thanked God that we were born into a family where love was never lacking. Then one day, Father and David were happy with my good marks in 12th grade and got me admission into the university. I was overjoyed, thinking, "Father, I am really getting admission, I will go to university." He said, "Yes, daughter, and you will go to the best university in the city." Father said proudly. Mother kissed my forehead and said, "My daughter will become a professor." The first day at university was memorable. David himself dropped me and said, "Take care, don't get into trouble with anyone, and if needed, call me immediately." I teasingly said, "And if someone wants to be friends with me?" David jokingly said, "Then their end will be very bad." We both laughed. That moment is still preserved in my heart like the most precious photo in an album. I made some new friends at university, but my heart always revolved around home. My biggest wish in daily tasks was to go back quickly, sit with Mother and drink tea, and talk a lot with David. Often at night, when everyone was asleep, I would go to the terrace, look at the sky, count stars, and think how lucky I was. I had no worries, no fear, only love, only peace. Father said, "Daughter, now after university you have to be independent. Along with studies, learn household work." Mother immediately said, "Give her some more time, she's still a child. The daughter has just started studying." Father laughed and said, "It will be according to my princess's wishes." Every day had a special happiness. There was no trouble or sorrow. Sometimes it felt so complete that an unknown anxiety crept in my heart, like the calm before a big storm. But at that time, I told myself no, nothing will happen. My world will remain as it is. But fate does not care about anyone's wishes. I didn't know then that my laughing world would soon change, and the moment when everything would break was not far away. Only a few days had passed since university admission. Everything was new, but interesting friendships were forming. Assignments had started. I used to stay at university all day. In the evening, I came home to find my favorite dishes on the dining table. Sometimes David came home late, and I would wait for him sitting. One day, when I came home, Mother and Father were not there. The kitchen was closed, and the door was open from inside, but there was silence. I called out for Mother and Father, but no answer came. My heart got a little anxious, thinking maybe they had gone to someone's house in the neighborhood. I kept my bag and called David, but he didn't pick up. Feeling restless, I called Mother, but the call cut off at the second ring. Something felt strange. Then the doorbell rang. I opened the mail door, and our neighbor Mrs. Lisa came with a silent face. She said, "Son, be strong. Your parents had an accident." Hearing this, my legs seemed to disconnect from the ground. For a while, I just stared at her face. My tongue was tied, my eyes went silent, and my heart seemed to have stopped beating. I asked, "What?" She said nothing, just placed her hand on my shoulder and said, "Come, we have to go to the hospital. Your brother is there." On the way in the car, all I remember was the sound of the siren. I was silent, my eyes looking outside the door, but my mind was blank as if everything had stopped. At the hospital, when I saw David, he was sitting in a corner, hiding his face in his hands. I went to him, and we looked at each other for a few moments. Then he said softly that mother and father were no more. Those words echoed like an explosion in my chest. I sat on the ground, unable to scream or cry, just sitting as if life had left my body. My eyes were dry, but my heart was in chaos. Someone supported me, gave me water, voices were around, but I could not hear anything. David sat close, holding my hands, and kept saying, "Natasha, I am here with you." For the first time, I saw tears in his eyes. On the day of the funeral, the whole neighborhood was silent. People kept coming, but I heard nothing. My home, which used to be cheerful, was now drowned in a strange silence. Mother's scent was still in her room. Father's clock was still leaning against the sofa. David was managing everything, but it was clear on his face that he was broken. When everyone left and only we two were left at home, David sat beside me and said, "You are my sister. You are my responsibility. I will never leave you alone." I said nothing, just bowed my head. The next day when I woke up, no one was in the kitchen. No breakfast was made. I made tea myself but stopped. The same tea Mother used to make for me, but today I did not feel its taste. I also made tea for David and took the cup to his room. I knocked, and after a while, he came with disheveled hair and a very weak body. I quietly said, "David, here is your tea." He took the cup slowly and said thank you softly. Those days and nights passed the same way. I was always lost in the memory of my parents. Their voices, their words echoed in my mind. One day David took me outside and said, "Come, let's take a walk, maybe the mind will find peace." We went to the park and sat in a coffee shop, but I couldn't speak. David kept talking. University friends, books, seemed like trying to pull life back. He said, "You have to study, Natasha, and fulfill our parents' dreams." I quietly asked, "And how will you live, David, without me?" He looked at me and tried to smile unsuccessfully. He said, "I can't live without you. That's why you have to stay with me." But we spent that night on the terrace, becoming strong. In silence, I looked up at the sky. Even the stars seemed sad today. Mother's scarf was kept with my pillow. Father's clock was on my side table. Every night, David would come and ask if I needed anything, and I would say no, just pray that I could sleep. Everything was the same now, but nothing was really the same anymore, and perhaps it never would be. Days were passing slowly. Some habits were forming, but inside there was a void that stayed with me all the time. University notes were kept in the cupboard as if they belonged to someone else's life. I didn't have the courage to get out of bed in the morning. Often David would silently knock on the door and say, "Only half an hour left. Let's go there and come back." One day, he pulled a chair beside me and sat down, saying, "Natasha, our parents have left us. That is true. But your life hasn't gone. They wanted you to become something. Now if you give up, then what will remain?" I said softly, "I don't feel like studying, David." He said, "I also don't feel like going to work, but I have to, otherwise we both will lose each other." His words were gentle, but I could feel the pressure behind them. The next day, David got my uniform washed and cleaned my bag. He bought new shoes of my choice. I asked, "David, why all this?" He said, "It's the day of your return. That's why I insisted, but you wouldn't listen." To be honest, I also wanted everything to be normal, only my tongue was not cooperating. That day, when I stepped out of the gate, it felt like I was carrying a heavy burden with every step. Even the university walls seemed strange. The voices and noise of friends were familiar, yet distant. Happiness rushed and sang, "You're back." When and how? Thank God. I smiled and said, "David brought me." The days and nights passed like this. David would go to drop me in the morning and bring me back in the evening. He handled all meals and tasks on time perfectly. I often wondered how he was doing all this while also in shock. One evening, there was a knock on the door. I opened to find our neighbor Mrs. Patricia with her daughter Angela, who had come after a long time. Mrs. Patricia hugged me and asked, "Daughter, how are you? Your parents were also like family to us." Angela stood silently. I softly said, "Auntie, please come in." After they came in, David also entered the room. Mrs. Patricia looked at him and then said quietly, "Daughter, what your father told us must now be fulfilled. Our daughter Angela's fate is now in your hands." Actually, Father had arranged for Angela's hand in marriage with David's while he was alive, but this was not told to me. Yes, David knew. He remained silent and then said, "Auntie, I need to think about it. Please give me some time." Auntie said, "Son, time is never given by itself, it has to be taken. Decide soon. My daughter's fate is tied to you. Your parents themselves chose this for you." The matter stopped there, but the atmosphere changed. Angela was still silent, but her eyes said a lot. I noticed she often looked at David but quickly looked away. I told her, "Don't disappear anymore. I don't like it. I know you were my parents' choice." Angela smiled for the first time. That night, David sat beside me, and I quietly asked, "David, have you thought about Aunt Patricia's proposal?" He was silent for a moment, then said, "Father's wish was Angela. What do you think?" I said, "If you're happy, then I'm very happy too." After a few days, Patricia's family came to our house. The wedding date was fixed. Both families of David and Angela had talked, and I was sitting with Angela discussing her lehenga. After returning to the room, David said maybe mother and father had also wished this. I quietly said, "Maybe we will get a complete family again, David." After some time, I went to the terrace. The sky looked the same again, but there was one difference. For the first time, I thought maybe some wounds really do heal with time, and some new relationships put balm on those wounds. On the way back from Patricia's house, everything was quietly settled. David had agreed. The wedding date was final. No unnecessary ceremonies were insisted upon. A list of things was made. Everyone only gave blessings. I was just watching everything, trying to understand some things and trying to avoid feeling others. The wedding preparations changed the whole atmosphere of the house. Memories of mother and father came every moment, but David's smile forced me to stay strong every time. We both made checklists together, packing gift cards, catering, everything. David said, "You have selected Angela's wedding lehenga." I said, "Yes, David, it's light golden color. Sister-in-law will look very beautiful in it." David said, "And what about your own?" I said, "David, I haven't thought about myself." He said, "It's your brother's wedding. This time you have to look the most beautiful, like a princess." I laughed at his words, and the next day we went shopping. We went to the city's biggest market. Angela was with us. She was a bit quiet but gave her opinion whenever I asked. I chose the lehenga for her, and she said, "You buy it yourself. I completely trust your choice." I smiled and said, "Okay then, how do you like what I selected for you?" She said, "It's very beautiful." I liked it. After a while, David also came. He saw us shopping and then came to me saying, "You must be tired. Let's eat something." I looked at Angela and said, "Let's go. I am hungry too." Angela stayed quiet and then softly said, "You both eat. I won't have anything." The next day, when we were planning the decoration for the Mendi ceremony, David kept coming to my room asking, "Does this color look okay? How about fairy lights here? Please check once." I paused for a moment and said, "David, you should also ask Angela something." He laughed and said, "She leaves everything to you." Maybe that was the moment when Angela started to change. She became quiet. I felt that whenever David talked more with me, she would look away silently or avoid eye contact. Guests were coming, drums were beating, it was a happy atmosphere. Everyone was sitting on the Mendy stage. David had seated me beside him. Someone was singing, someone taking photos. Angela was standing a bit behind. I signaled her with my hand to come over, but she made an excuse and turned away. David stepped back and said, "Now you get your Mendy applied." I said, "No, David, it's your wedding. Your Mendy should be first." After a little while, the Mendy artist applied Mendy on my hand. Then David told her, "Make my sister's Mendy very beautiful." For a moment, I looked towards Angela. She was sitting in a corner, perhaps watching us. When the Mendy function ended, David said before getting into the car, "The whole ritual isn't complete without sitting with you. This day is special for me because you are with me." All the wedding preparations were done. David had given me every task, which I took full responsibility for. Relatives praised us as a loving brother-sister duo, wishing that God always keeps their love alive and that we always keep smiling. But in a corner of my heart, Angela's distant behavior settled, as if something was about to change, maybe it already had. The wedding day arrived with a bustling atmosphere throughout the house. I was busy with preparations from morning, taking care of everything on time. When David got ready and came out of his room, I saw him. He looked very handsome as a groom. I said, "David, you look very beautiful." He smiled and said, "And you're the same dear sister controlling everything." We left for the Barrett laughing along the way, but my heart felt strange, as if a nameless shadow was present amid happiness. When we reached, I held Angela's hand and said, "Now you are going to be my sister-in-law. Be happy, very happy." Angela looked away and said, "I hope I get the same happiness with you as you have with your brother." I felt something then but ignored it. All the wedding rituals went smoothly. When we returned home, Angela was welcomed grandly. David joked, but Angela stood silently. After the rituals, when I was about to escort her to her room and held her lehenga, she suddenly jerked and said, "Leave it, I can go myself." I froze and silence spread for a moment. David stood there, looked at me, then at Angela, and without saying anything, went to his room. I realized for the first time that Angela might be uncomfortable with my presence, but I didn't understand why. Did she find me unnecessary? The next day, she got ready and went out. I said, "You look very beautiful." She just said thank you and turned her face away. The wedding preparations had exhausted me. I lay down on the bed. David came out of his room and said, "Natasha, the wedding went very well. You handled everything." I smiled and said, "David, I only wanted your happiness." At that moment, Angela also came out of her room, looked at us for a moment, and then went straight to the kitchen. The next morning before going to office, David called me for breakfast and said, "Drink tea and come." I made it. I was surprised. "David, you made tea?" He said, "Yes, today is special. A new beginning of a new life." I went downstairs and had breakfast. Angela was in her room till then. After some time, she came out and softly asked David, "Did you not make tea for me?" David said, "You just woke up, right? I'll make it now." Holding the teacup, I said, "David, I'll make tea for Angela's sister-in-law." Angela said firmly, "No, no need. I can make it myself." I felt strange then, as if I was becoming less important in this house. In the afternoon, I talked to my friends about notes, and David said, "Call someone or go yourself. I'll pick you up in the evening." Angela said, "There's a new bride sitting at home and instead of her, you're always busy with your sister." David said nothing, just silently left. I went to Angela and asked, "Is something wrong?" She said, "Nothing, just some boundaries need to be set now." For the first time, someone used the word boundaries with me. The house where I was always free and had rights everywhere was now building walls. When David came home in the evening, I asked in the room, "David, are you okay? You seem different." He said, "Maybe time is changing a little. You'll have to take care of some things too." That night, I couldn't sleep and walked on the terrace. University exams were near. Dinah, my closest friend, and I decided to prepare together for a few days. She often came to my house because she liked the atmosphere. David had no problem with Dinah being here. In fact, he was happy that I was studying with someone I liked. But Dinah was quiet. She didn't say much or interfere in anything. She just focused on her studies and then went home. One day Dinah left late and her brother, Deep, came to pick her up. He thanked me. "Thank you, Natasha, you've helped my sister a lot." I said, "Without her, preparation isn't possible." I laughed, but he didn't react. Angela was watching everything from the window but gave no reaction then. Later, she came to the kitchen, put away the utensils without looking at me, and went back to her room. The next day Dinah forgot her notes. I called her, and she said, "I'll send Deep. He's nearby. Just give him the notes." I said okay but felt a strange hesitation inside. Deep came in the afternoon. I went to the gate and gave him the notes. He was about to say something when Angela came out of the room, saw us both standing together, stopped, and said, "Who is this?" I said, "Dinah's brother, here to get notes." She said, "Then what was the need to talk at the door?" I said, "I was giving him notes. He's leaving now." Deep left from there. Angela said nothing but her eyes showed clear anger. That night she sat silently at dinner. David asked 2 or 3 times if everything was okay. "Are you feeling unwell?" She said, "No, everything's fine." David asked, "Natasha, when are your exams?" I said, "David, they start the day after tomorrow." The next day when I was about to leave for university, Angela spoke to David separately. I couldn't hear what they said, but their faces changed. They looked at me intently. I asked, "What happened?" They said nothing, just picked up their car keys and left. In the evening, Dinah came home. We both started studying in the room. Angela came in once or twice under some excuse of tea or water and then quietly left. Dinah asked, "Natasha, does my sister-in-law not like me?" I said, "I don't know. Maybe some things she doesn't understand." Then Dinah left. I cleaned the room and was packing my bag to go to the library when David came into the room and said, "What is going on?" I said, "What?" He said, "You talk to boys at the door. You call them." Hearing this, my heart sank. I said, "David, no, that was just Dinah's brother. He came to get notes." David said, "Your sister-in-law told me everything. She keeps watching you. Your behavior has changed. You talk secretly." I said, "David, this is all wrong. I could never think like that." But he didn't listen. His eyes were red with anger. The next moment his hand came to my cheek. A sharp slap landed. Time seemed to stop. My ears went silent. Sound vanished. Angela stood at the door watching. But her face showed no worry, only relief, as if what she wanted had happened. I looked at David and said, "You didn't believe me." He turned his face away and left the room without saying a word. That night I didn't speak to anyone. Didn't eat, didn't answer any questions. I went to the terrace and sat there for a long time. The next day David didn't talk to me. Angela made breakfast but didn't call me or ask about me. I went to the kitchen and made my own breakfast. After a while David came into the kitchen, saw me, and was about to say something when Angela interrupted, "You strictly said that now she can take care of herself." I picked up my plate and went back to my room, closing the door. For the first time, I felt like a stranger in my own home. That night Dinah called, but I kept the phone silent. Deep messaged that everything was fine. I didn't reply. What's the use of words now? Those who don't want to hear the truth, there's no point explaining. When I opened my eyes in the morning, the walls of the room felt quieter than ever. I came downstairs. David was having breakfast with Angela sitting beside him. Her face had a strange calm, as if everything was happening as she wished. I said good morning. David responded with a gesture. Angela poured tea but didn't look at me. I quietly took out my breakfast and started eating. When I finished, David put aside his newspaper and said, "I've found a good match for you. The boy lives out of town. Has a good job. Better for you." I looked at him shocked. "David, I'm still at university. Exams aren't over yet." He said, "I can't wait for your studies to finish." Angela said, "Natasha, matches like this don't come every day. The boy offers security, respect, a better future." Inside, I was shocked but held myself back. I wanted to say something but my tongue was locked. I went back to my room. In the afternoon, Aunt Patricia came straight to my room and said, "Son, your brother's decision is absolutely right." Angela also said it was a very good match for me and I shouldn't be stubborn. I said quietly, "Auntie, my heart doesn't agree yet. I want to study more." She held my hand and said, "Time waits for no one. If you refuse now, you'll regret it later." I stayed silent. David came into the room holding some papers. He said, "This is the boy's profile. There's a photo too." I didn't take the papers and said, "David, please, I need more time." He said angrily, "More time? Or are you talking to someone else?" I looked at him surprised and said, "You still don't trust your sister?" Cutting me off, he said, "A sister's respect is in leaving at the right time." Tears filled my eyes but I said nothing. He left the room. The next day, suddenly there was liveliness at home. Angela's face was glowing. I went to the kitchen and asked her, "Do you really want me to marry a stranger like this?" Without looking at me, she said, "I only want what your brother decided." That night, when I was in my room, David came again and said, "We've moved forward with things. Your wedding is next week, start preparing." I said, "David, this is force." His eyes sharpened and he said, "It's my decision, not force." I held myself back, locked my tongue, or I would have screamed. Wedding preparations were underway. Lists were made. Invitations distributed. I tried hard to talk to David but he stopped listening. Angela ignored me every moment, and when alone, every word of hers fell on my wounds like salt. She said, "You have to leave, no matter what." One day, I was sitting alone in my room. The door was open. David came in and said, "You're still stubborn." I said, "I'm just begging for my life." He said, "Then save your respect and don't refuse the wedding." I said, "This isn't respect, it's helplessness." The next moment his hand rose again, harder than before. Angela stood smiling at the door. I sat on the floor but tears didn't come anymore. The effect of crying had lessened. David closed the door and said, "You won't leave this room till the wedding." Then the door closed. I thought, this David who always stood up for me in small matters was now a wall in front of me. One day, at the door, my sister-in-law was drinking tea, laughing on the phone, while inside, a broken sister had gone silent. Tuesday was my wedding day. I had been locked in the room for 4 days. The door opened, our food was placed inside, and the door closed. Angela came once a day and left. David didn't come in front of me anymore. In the evening, the door opened. Angela came in with a note. She said, "Bring these medicines. I'll be busy eating soon. The medical store is nearby. Close the door after coming back." I took the note, suspicion in my eyes, but my tongue wasn't fit to argue anymore. The door was open. The outside air hit my face like I was breathing after years. I stepped out. The corner had a medical store. It was familiar but every step I took was with fear, as if someone was watching. I steeled myself and walked toward the medical store. The shopkeeper was reading the list of medicines when Deep came there. He stopped, surprised to see me, and said, "Did you call me here?" I was shocked and said, "What?" Angela had said I called him here. Hearing this, my face went pale. I said, "I came here just to get the medicines." He got confused, took out his phone, and started showing me a message. The message was indeed sent from my number, "Come to the medical store. Need to talk urgently." I said, "That's not my message, Deep. My phone is in the room." Just then, the sound of a car horn was heard. David had arrived. He saw us together, his face turned pale. For a moment, he stood there, then got down and came towards us briskly, asking, "What are you doing here?" And this boy, the same behavior again. I said, "David, listen, I only came for medicines." He looked at Deep and said, "You better leave now, or if I see you near my sister again, it won't be good." Deep tried to say something, but I stopped him with my eyes. He left silently. David said, "Let's go home." On the way back, David was the quietest of all. As he got into the car, he slammed the door. When we reached home, he grabbed me roughly by the arm like a criminal and dragged me inside. Angela was sitting in the drawing room on the phone but hung up immediately when she saw us and came close, asking, "What happened?" David's voice echoed, "You know everything." Angela said, "She herself called that boy." I had no idea this would happen. Helplessly, I looked at David and said, "David, she sent the message from my phone." "I didn't." David said, "Be quiet. Every time you have a new story." Before I could say anything else, he slapped me hard again. I fell to the ground. Angela looked at me for a moment, then turned away. David said, "Enough is enough. Your wedding is tomorrow. You can't do as you please anymore." I barely gathered myself and said, "No, the wedding can't happen tomorrow." David cut me off saying, "I no longer have the right to decide." I stayed silent. Perhaps using my voice would only hurt more. Angela held David's hand and said, "You're not feeling well. Rest. I'll handle her." When David left the room, Angela came near me and said, "The game you tried to play has turned against you. Your brother has seen everything with his own eyes. No one will believe you now." I said, "You did all this, Angela." She replied, "Then where's the proof? Who will believe your truth?" I remained silent. Her face now showed the full glow of victory. Late that night, David spoke with my in-laws, and Tuesday had arrived, the day of the wedding. The order was given that preparations be completed. The door was locked again, this time with a latch. I just kept wondering, does blood relation break on a false accusation, and can a conspiracy succeed so easily? The walls of the room echoed truth, but the door was shut, and trust was dead. On Tuesday morning, the house was silent, but an uneasy tension hung in the air. I was still trapped in the room. When the lock was opened, only a plate was slid inside for food. Voices could be heard as if everything was normal. No one knew that a life was breaking behind this door. I was called out, prepared, and then there was noise. The door opened. David came in and said, "The Barrett is coming." I raised my head and said, "David, you have no right to marry me off. I won't accept this marriage." Anger flashed in his eyes. He said, "After what I saw yesterday, you have no right to object. You've brought shame upon us." I stepped forward and said, "David, it was all your wife's plan. I did nothing." Deep came himself. I tried to stop him. David said, "Enough. You can't stay here anymore." For a moment, I thought I heard wrong. I said, "David, what do you mean?" He said, "It means you're no longer worthy of this house. Leave now, immediately." I was stunned. My ears were ringing. The door opened. David grabbed my arm and dragged me out by force. I kept resisting. "David, please, for God's sake. Where will I go? He opened the door and pushed me outside. Before the door closed, I heard just one sentence: "You have no place in this house anymore." The door locked from inside, and I fell down. Sitting in front of the door, I kept pounding it. "David, please listen to me. Just once." But no answer came. Some women passed by, saw me like this, then turned away. I was like someone who'd lost everything. I covered my face with my scarf and asked the Almighty, "What is my fault? Where will I go now? Who is mine?" At that moment, behind the curtain at the window, I heard a voice. Angela was on the phone saying, "Yes, everything went as we planned. We used her phone, called Deep there, got his brother there on time, and now the game is over. She's out of the way. Her brother isn't hers anymore. Now he trusts me completely." My heartbeat quickened. I turned to look at the window. The voice was clear. I knocked on the door again and said, "David, this is all a lie. Your wife is cheating you." No reply came. Everyone was silent, probably busy watching the drama. I stayed there till evening. Sometimes I stood near the door, sometimes sat down again. People came and went, but no one approached me. Some didn't recognize me. Some looked with questioning eyes, but no one asked. Night deepened. I sat by the door, heart pounding, reminding me I was still alive. I heard laughter nearby. Then Angela's voice came, "Remove her from the door. What will people think of us?" Someone knocked loudly from inside, as if saying, "Go away from here." I was no longer able to ask for anything, just quietly stepped out into the street. But I was no longer afraid. Maybe when everything is taken away, a person becomes free inside. Night had deepened. I sat on an empty bench by the roadside. The light was dim, the air cold, and no footsteps echoed far away. Sometimes a bike passed, a door opened and closed, but nothing mattered to me anymore. A forced wedding was now far behind. A house I had lovingly decorated now had closed doors. I was not in a mood to decide anything, just passing time. The cold air, silent ground, and inner silence were with me. Angela was on the phone talking to some friend that the wedding was cancelled and she was out of the house now, living life freely. David passed by the room and stopped. From inside, voices could be heard. The door was slightly ajar. David stopped and listened to his wife talking. She said, "You won't believe it," but as Natasha kept stubbornly resisting, my plan became easier and easier. The person on the phone asked, "So can she come back now?" Angela said, "Never. Her brother saw what I showed him and now he trusts only me." Hearing this, the veil lifted from David's eyes. He stood there for a moment, then pushed the door open. Angela's eyes widened in shock. She looked at David and asked, "When did you come?" David said, "I just heard enough to shame any brother." Angela got nervous and said, "No, I was just joking. You're misunderstanding." David said, "No, I've misunderstood everything for years. This is the first time I heard the truth." He turned and left, opening the door. He looked out but didn't see his sister anywhere. His heart raced. He started searching the whole neighborhood and finally spotted me sitting on a bench at the corner. He said, "Natasha," as I looked up, there was David. His breath was short, and there was shame in his eyes. Slowly, he walked towards me, but I stepped back. He said, "Come." I asked, "No, why have you come for me?" "Someone else had already won your trust." He said, "Forgive me. I scolded you because I was blind, but now my eyes have opened. Everything you said turned out to be true." I asked, "So now that the truth is out, will everything come back? Who will account for the wounds you gave me?" David sat on the ground and said, "Please forgive me. I didn't know whose hands I was playing from." I stayed silent for a while, tears falling from my eyes. Then I quietly said, "If my parents were alive, would you trust me? Would you still believe your wife then?" David said nothing, just bowed his head. Then we both went home. The door opened, this time for me, but the atmosphere inside was quiet. Angela came forward. David angrily said, "You made a daughter homeless, falsely accused a sister. What you did is unforgivable." Angela lowered her eyes, then suddenly said, "I am going to be a mother." Silence filled the room. David asked, "What did you say?" She said, "Yes, I am going to be your child's mother." David sat back on the sofa and said, "But the doctor said." His words trailed off. Angela quickly said, "Maybe the doctor's report is wrong. I am sure this happiness is coming to our home." I stood near the corner of the room. Doubt crept into my heart, but I stayed silent. David said softly, "The reports must be investigated because if you're telling the truth, I am ready to give you another chance, but if it's a lie, this door will be closed to you forever." Angela paled, bowed her head, and went inside. I came close to David and asked, "Are you sure?" He said, "Now I believe the truth, and it can no longer be hidden." The house was the same, the walls the same, the ground the same, but the atmosphere had changed. A conspiracy was exposed, one relationship was trying to mend, and another was in danger. The next morning, David sat in the courtyard reading not the newspaper but last night's events. I placed tea in front of him. He silently turned the page but then said, "Natasha, this is the doctor's appointment. It's somewhere today." David ate silently. He neither spoke nor asked anything, nor reacted to anything, as if something inside him had shut down. One evening, I was sitting in the courtyard. The sun was blazing. David was also sitting there on a chair to one side. Suddenly his phone rang. He answered and said, "Yes, doctor." I looked at him in surprise. His face was already full of shock at the first words he heard. He said, "What are you saying?" There was silence for a while, then he said, "I will come myself to talk to you." He hung up. I went close to him and asked, "David, is everything all right?" He silently looked at me and then said, "The doctor says there was a mistake in the report. The report in my name was someone else's." Hearing this, I felt my breath stop. He said, "Yes, I can become a father." We both remained silent for a moment as if time had stopped. Then he said softly, "Natasha, Angela lied and conspired, but she is pregnant. Maybe she really is going to be the mother of my child." I closed my eyes for a moment and then quietly asked, "So what will you do now?" He stood up and said, "She has already received the biggest punishment. I disowned her, humiliated her, and she was left alone. If she was telling the truth, why should my child suffer?" I listened silently. He paused and said, "If you want, I can bring her back." I looked up at him and said, "David, I forgave her the very day you opened the door for me." The next morning, David got ready and left without telling anyone anything. At noon, there was a bell at the door. I opened it to see David and Angela standing silently. She did not look at me. David said, "She has come to apologize to you and to her God as well." I opened the door and stepped aside. A home is for everyone, just the heart should not be small. Angela came inside with slow steps, stopped near me, and said, "I have ruined a lot, but now I have just one prayer, that something remains." I said, "You have to live with whatever is left." Days began to change. David went to work like before. I started preparing for university, and Angela had really changed. She was quiet but helped me with every small task. One day, while making tea in the kitchen, she softly said, "If I were in your place, I might never forgive." I said, "Everyone's tolerance is different, but forgiveness lightens the heart, and all of us have to ask for forgiveness someday." She just nodded, and that night David made tea for everyone. We sat in the courtyard and talked. The house had a happy atmosphere. David said, "Angela, thank you for the moments you have restored between us." I smiled and said, "But life would have been easier if nothing had broken." Angela said, "I thank God that He gave me a child. I wish the child will grow up like you, pure-hearted and truthful. I looked up at the sky, the same stars, the same moon, but this time their light was different. Now everything is in life: happiness, love, respect. I still remember my parents today. I have fulfilled my parents' dream. I became a commissioner, and my sister-in-law gave birth to a son. The house is full of joy. All old conspiracies and traps are over. Friends, I hope you liked our story. If you did, please like the video. If you're new to the channel, subscribe and don't forget to press the notification bell so you get the next update first.